some lover you have there. It's not like that. You didn't kill her. It was an accident. It wasn't his fault. And he's not a paralegal. He's a lawyer. He's finished law school and passed the bar exam. He's not a dilettante. He must work awfully hard since he can spend all his days screwing you. Stop saying that, she screamed. Jonathan glared at her. I thought you were the one who wanted to do this in private. If you're going to start screaming, we might as well invite the kids in. We don't spend all of our days screwing. If you have to know, we only make love a few days a week. Do you ever have sex with me on the days you screw him? Jonathan asked. She blushed. I told you, it's not about the sex. God, Susan. You are such a 304. You disgust me. Does it thrill you to make me screw you when you've been with your lover? Do you ever make me go down on you after you've been with him? How much of a cuck have you made me? No, Jonathan. Don't say that. I would never do anything like that. I always clean up after I'm with him. I wouldn't do that to you. I love you. I wouldn't flaunt it like that. I don't want to hurt you. Please, can we not talk about this? I love you, honey. I want things to be wonderful between us. Can't you let me have this? I'll make sure you never regret it. I promise. Jonathan shook his head. Tell me when you've stopped seeing him. If I'm still around, we can see if there's anything left to salvage of our marriage. He turned and walked out the door, unwilling to continue the useless conversation. He made himself a sandwich and watched his wife take call after call in the bedroom. She walked up to him while he was cleaning up in the kitchen. That was my grandfather, disowning me. Are you going to be a complete a-hole about this? Do you really want to start a pissing contest you can't win? Stop seeing him, Jonathan said. I'm going out for a while. I'll be back for dinner. It would be nice if you took some time out of your busy schedule to cook something for once. You just got here, she whined. We still have to talk. After dinner, using the information the judge had acquired, Jonathan was standing on the doorstep of the Tudor 10 minutes later. It was a nice house, larger than his own, far more than a single man needed. The door opened. Yes. Jonathan stuck his foot in the door. I want you to stop screwing my wife. You killed your wife. Now you're killing my marriage. Stop. The slender, smaller man looked up in fear. He leaned against the door, pushing it closed, but it didn't budge. I don't know what you're talking about. Stop screwing Susan Fremont. Mrs. Jonathan Fremont. My wife. Don't ever get in a car with her. If you kill her too, I'll hunt you down and make sure your last minutes on Earth are as miserable as possible. I don't want to kill her screwing the mother of my children. I'm not a killer. It was an accident, the frightened man said. You killed her. You're living off the money you made doing it. You spent that blood money seducing then screwing my wife. Stop it. If you don't, I will, and you won't like that. You can't threaten me, the man whined. Stop screwing her, you little worm. There are plenty of single women out there that the fee for killing your wife can buy you. Leave my wife alone. Murdering scumsucker. Jonathan walked away, confident he'd gotten his points across. If Susan had been angry before, she was absolutely furious when he got home. She marched toward him angrily, and he strolled past her, lifting his youngest onto his lap, tickling her, getting her to giggle. I'd like to talk, please, Susan said, standing beside him. Then talk. In private. He shrugged, happy to have yanked her chain once more. He walked back to the bedroom, his wife following him, closing the door behind them. You attacked him? Threatened him? Called him a killer? A murderer? She spat at her husband. Him? I'm not sure. Which him are you talking about? God damn it. You're no good and well. What do you think you're doing? I told him I didn't want him screwing my wife anymore. I don't think that's unreasonable. You called him a killer. Yes, I did. He is. He killed his wife. I told him I didn't want him driving you anywhere. I don't want him killing you also. Even if you are a 304, you're still the mother of my children. He didn't kill her. It was an accident. You have no right saying that. He was driving. She died. He killed her. Just as dead as if he put a gun to her head. How could you? It almost destroyed him. He loved her. His depression was so bad he almost died. It took me years to get him to where he is today. So you're saying if I can get him depressed again, he might die, and this nightmare will all be over? Jonathan asked. She stared at the man she'd been married to for 11 years. How could he have changed so much in so little time? Become so heartless, so unfeeling. You don't mean that. You couldn't. I'd dance on his grave if it meant you becoming a good faithful wife again and placing this family first. She looked into his eyes and shivered. There was no doubt in her mind he was telling her the absolute truth. He needs me, Jonathan. If you ever loved me at all, you'll understand. He needs me. Let this run its course. Give me a little time. When he's strong enough to be on his own, I'll give him up. Can we do that? Please? We won't have to talk about it. I'll be discreet. Nobody has to know. I'll be the perfect wife. Don't make this any worse. Do what you have to do, Susan. Obviously, I can't stop you. But as long as you're seeing him, you're my wife in name only. You'll live in this house and take care of the children, but our love will be on life support. I don't know how long it will last. I know you don't care, but it's only fair that you should know. Don't say I don't care, baby. I still love you. I'll show you. I only need a little while. If you can't accept that, then I will divorce you. I'll take your kids and your house, and I'll make rich their father. Is that what you want? That will never happen, Susan. You need to know that. How can you stop it? I have the law on my side. You'll pay. You'll work your bum off for kids you never see, so I can have my love, my home, and my kids. You'll have nothing. Never happen, Susan. Take my word for it, he said sadly. Don't put it to the test. She stared at him nervously. He meant it. She could tell. 11 years together told her he was dead serious. You're not going to do anything stupid, are you? She asked. Stop seeing him. And stop threatening me. He stared at her, daring her to challenge him. She was the first to blink, running into the bathroom, crying at how it had possibly come to this. Carrot and stick. That was the plan for Susan. Hints for the carrot Jonathan had received from the Eagles' wives. It made sense that a trio of 70-something women would know a thing or two about how the female mind operates. Obviously, I didn't have a clue, he thought. Susan was out of sorts after he'd shaken up her day. Quite intentionally, he decided to handle the kids and give her some quiet time. He got them into bed, eventually, although Cindy was fighting to stay up past 9 o'clock now that she was a big girl. He compromised, letting her stay up until 9:15 to cut off the discussion, and maybe a little to assuage his guilt over leaving for 2 days. With the house quieted down, he could hear Susan on the phone. It might have been Loverboy, or maybe there was a friend or two she confided in. He didn't know. At that moment, he didn't really care. Jonathan opened a bottle of wine and selected 2 crystal goblets for them. He knocked on the bedroom door and waited a moment for her to get off the phone. She eventually opened it, looking up at him sadly. You don't have to knock. It's your bedroom, she said softly. He walked past her and put the tray down on the bedside table. He remembered her locking the door on him a few nights earlier. His bedroom. Right. I didn't want to interrupt you on the phone, he explained. It was just my sister, Jenny. She wanted to know what was going on. Everybody's talking, you know. You've really started a mess. He hadn't started anything. She was the one screwing around, cheating. Now was not the time to remind her of that. He poured out a glass for her, stood and put it in her hand. It's been a rough week, hasn't it? He wanted her to open up, start talking. He'd listen, as much as he could stand. She nodded. Horrible. I never wanted this, Jonathan. I thought everything could be the same. Not like this. Why do you have to make things so difficult? He filled his own glass and patted the bed beside him. Come, sit by me. Let's talk. Quietly, civilly. I still love you, baby. She climbed on the bed, her bedshirt climbing up her thighs when she sat cross-legged facing him. Talk? No yelling, no accusations? He reached out and rubbed her bare knee. Yes, talk. What went wrong, Susan? How did I fail you that you needed to find what you were missing in another man's arms? The ice around her heart started to melt. He did care. It's complicated, honey. I love you. I never stopped loving you. Please tell me you believe that. Of course I do, he said, barely able to stomach the lie. Would we be here if I didn't? It was never supposed to happen. It was all just a series of small little things that kept building. I started talking to him at a party, and he was so sad and dejected over his life. I found myself trying to comfort him. The first time I got him to smile was a huge success. The first tentative laugh was a greater one. I felt so good, like what I was doing mattered. She looked at her husband nervously, and he just nodded. It's wrong, I know, but I was tired of being just a mom and housewife. My days of mind-numbing repetition. Taking care of a toddler, a 6-year-old, and an 8-year-old, I never seemed to have time for me. You were so busy all the time. I know, God, Jonathan, it hurts to even say it. I know you were doing it for us, for me, for the kids, for the family, but all you did was work and come home exhausted, and I felt unloved, like you didn't care for me. I was just a nanny and housekeeper. Jonathan reviewed the advice the older women had given him. Don't argue about what she felt, right or wrong. Let her come to the right conclusions on her own. Steer her that way carefully. Allow her to put some of the blame on him, accept it, and she'd feel all the more guilty. I'm sorry, baby. I should have seen it. 10-hour days, 6 days a week are pretty exhausting when you have a physical job like mine. It's no excuse for letting things slide between us. I appreciated everything you did, even though I might not have said it. She shook her head, eyes glistening. I know it wasn't your fault. I could have talked to you more about it, but you seemed like you were slipping away. No time for me for us. You were drinking more. You always seemed to be sitting on that couch with a beer in your hand. I started hating that damn couch and that TV. You always had time for them, but not for me. Jonathan let her vent. I'm often under a lot of stress. It was something I did to try to relieve that. I didn't want you to have to feel the pressure I was under. We were letting people go, and there was more and more to do with tighter schedules. I should have talked to you about it, instead of holding it in. She sniffled and wiped her eyes. I was bored, and he became my project. That was all, to start with. There was nothing there for a year. I didn't see him that way, I swear. I felt good helping him, watching him slowly pull himself together. I felt useful, and that's what I needed. That was our entire problem. It was never about a lack of affection, or our lovemaking, or falling out of love with you. I never stopped loving you. I was doing something that made me feel good, and I was proud. I wasn't doing anything wrong, except maybe spend too much time with another man, but it wasn't romantic. It was like a job, one I was doing well at. I can see how that could happen. Everyone needs to feel good about themselves. I had hoped that being a wonderful mother and terrific wife would have filled that need. I understand you weren't getting the feedback from us, that you were from him. Jonathan was finding it harder to keep up the act, doing nothing wrong. Then why did she hide it for a year? She had finished her wine, and Jonathan refilled her glass. She took a long sip gratefully. It happened so fast, I wasn't ready for it. Things went slowly at first. Some phone calls, a few lunch meetings, or having a coffee together. We talked like you, and I didn't anymore. He was easy to talk to. He wanted to go to dinner, but I couldn't. I was a married woman. There's a difference between a lunch and a dinner. I offered to cook him a meal. It was a little weird at first, in a strange kitchen, not knowing where anything was. A little exciting if I'm honest. I still had no romantic feelings. He was just a friend. Jonathan filled his own glass. He didn't want to hear this. He didn't need a blow-by-blow. He just wanted her to tell him what was wrong with their marriage, that she had to screw another man for a year. Not this sappy, whining monologue about friendship. Men don't want women for friends. He knew that the slimy scumsucker intended to get into his wife's pants from the very beginning. He wanted to shake her and explain it to her. Make her understand. The poor pitiful me act, playing on her mothering instincts. Instead, he tried to stay calm, nodding occasionally. After that, it became easier to go his house than out in public. It was private, and we could talk more openly. Plus, I didn't want anyone to get ideas about us. We were just friends. She looked at him hopefully that he might understand. Go on, Jonathan said. She felt so good to be able to talk it out. Surely he would understand now. This was all they needed. A little time for him to get over the shock, to let his male ego take a back seat. Once he understood why, it would all be fine. I helped him around the house. He was so disorganized. Cleaned a little. Helped rearrange things. He'd let everything go after his wife's accident. We talked more. We could talk about anything. Sometimes we talked about our wants and needs. Then some more about our desires, our fantasies. Things we had done or wanted to do. It wasn't about sex. It was about communication, sharing, understanding. He was seducing you, Jonathan blurted, not meaning to say the words. She looked surprised. No, never. He was a friend. Someone who needed me and who I needed. Good friends can talk about things like that. That was all. He's not like that. Jonathan bit his lip, waiting. If he opened his mouth, the entire night's effort would be wasted. He tilted the bottle up and poured the last of it into her glass. It just happened. I was in the kitchen, and then we were kissing. I know I should have stopped it, but it was a kiss between friends. Then suddenly it wasn't. I don't even know how I ended up in his bedroom. Her hand was shaking as she sipped her wine. She looked up at him, and he saw tears in her eyes. I never meant for it to happen. I felt horrible. I came home and showered, scrubbing and scrubbing, but I could never get myself clean. I had cheated for the only time in my marriage, and I hated myself for it. I knew you'd see it in my eyes, but you only grabbed a beer and sat on the couch. You didn't ask me, didn't see the guilt. I wondered if you even cared. She drank down half her wine. I tried to end it. He called, and I told him to stop. I avoided him, not going anywhere we used to go. I swore to myself I'd never do anything like that again, and I'd make it up to you. Then I heard he was in the hospital from an overdose of sleeping pills, and I knew it was because of me. I'd almost killed him. I went to him to help him, but we promised each other that it could never happen again. I'm so sorry, Jonathan. I tried to stop it. I swear I did. I felt so bad seeing him slipping away again. Jonathan was furious at his stupid, gullible wife and that slimy predator. Overdose, my bump, he thought. A few pills, a call to the hospital, and he had her back after she resisted his efforts. Jonathan took the empty glass from her and placed it on the bedside table. She was sobbing, and he drew her into his arms, holding her. If she'd only talked then, this could have all been avoided. He could have forgiven her one stupid mistake. He was fairly certain he could. But a year of adultery? Demanding that she be allowed to keep seeing that slime ball? Threatening him? No, that he couldn't accept. She'd pay. They'd both pay. He guided her down to the bed. She whimpered when he let her go, but all he did was turn off the lights. He pulled her close, holding her, letting his hands caress her body, slowly becoming more intimate, moving from her sides and shoulders to her jugs, in all the ways that excited her. She sat up and pulled her shirt off, lying naked in their bed. She turned to him, reaching out. He braced himself for the more intimate contact. He was torn. He was disgusted with her, but her body was something he knew so well, had pleasured him so many times. It was tainted now, but still enthralling. He eased her backward, leaning over her. He couldn't kiss her. That filthy, lying, cheating mouth of hers. He pressed his lips to her neck, right where it excited her most. In only a few minutes she was pressing back desperately. He pulled his hand away, hearing the sharpness of her breath, smelling her need. The 304. He cuddled against her, putting his arm around her, holding her. Love me, Jonathan? Please. It's been too long, she whispered. No, baby. I won't be second to him. I can't do that. She reached for him. You were never second. I love you. You're my husband. You're first, he's second. My nights are yours. They've always been. You spent 2 nights in his bed. I have no doubt that once I'm at work you'll be screwing him again. I get a few moments with you, but he can spend all his time with you, pampering you, telling you how wonderful you are, stealing you away from me. I can't do it. Honey, it hasn't been a problem for over a year now. You don't even have to know. When I'm here with you, I'm only yours. He had tried. Damn, how he tried. The words were like knives, filleting him open. He released her and rolled away from her, onto his side. 304. I married a cheating 304. Susan didn't understand, couldn't understand what had just happened. He'd been so good, loving, understanding. Then to shut down like that. Why couldn't he just love her? Make love to her? Nothing had changed. She moved to him, wrapping her arms around his wide body. He was so strong, made her feel small, feminine. She felt him tense up, and she felt a pang of guilt. What if she had stopped back then? After that first time, she sighed. Too late for that now. She had to make him understand. Nothing would change. It could be good again. Maybe even wonderful again, like it had been in the beginning. Her hand reached around to his waist, and he shuddered when her fingers wrapped around his hardness. Please, Jonathan, she whispered. I know you want me. I'm here for you. I'll always be here for you. Never again, so long as you're seeing him, Jonathan said coldly, rolling away from her onto his stomach. Susan turned away from him, the rejection painful. She didn't even try to hold back the tears as she cried herself to sleep. The next morning, Jonathan was up bright and early. It was the dawn of a new day, and he no longer felt out of control. He had confronted both his wife and her lover about their behavior, insisting it end. He'd started down a path to help ensure it stopped, with the help of his family and friends. That included quitting his old job and going back to work on the family ranch. It also meant early hours. Susan was still in bed when he headed downstairs for a quick breakfast. He idly wondered if she'd run off and screw her boyfriend that day. At the ranch, Uncle Lynn introduced him around most of the people he already knew. He was told his responsibilities and put under the direction of old Miguel, who'd been working with the family for a good 20 years. Uncle Lynn sent word down for him to come to the house for his lunch break. There was a big spread set out, and he was smiling when he saw his grandfather and friends waiting for him. He gave them a quick 10-minute update on the weekend, the discussion with his mother and his wife's family, the visit to the casino, glossing over the female companionship he'd found. He reviewed his actions with his wife and the confrontation with the scumucker. The grandfather spoke when he was finished. You should know, The Gray Brigade is making this their personal project. Gray Brigade? Jonathan asked. The colonel responded. Senior Center. All the retirees. A little excitement in their lives. If the little 304 keeps it up, she's going to be hearing about it. That's for damn sure. Madge Johnson lives across the street a couple of doors down from the scumsucker, Carl Jenkins said. Her daughter works at the My Store. She'll be keeping an eye on the house. Anyone coming and going, Madge and her sister will know about it. The judge laughed. Her parents are getting an earful as well. So sad to hear the kind of woman your daughter turned out to be. Is that why your other daughter moved away? I'm glad I'm not on their bad side. You need to talk to the bank, John. Get all your contact information moved to my house. When you get behind on payments, we don't need them calling your house, and your 304 wife getting wind of it, his grandfather said. The judge had some papers out. The guy's wife. The dead woman. Her name was Heather. I've got some pictures. Buried in the Methodist cemetery. Pretty ugly. He was thrown clear of the car. She was stuck inside. She might have been killed in the impact, but the car caught fire, and she was burned to the point where she was barely recognizable. The suit he won was about that. The vehicle had a history of catching fire in accidents. Jonathan nodded. Some good information he could work with. Thank you, sir. No problem. We take care of our own. He had his directions. Hot and cold to his wife. Start the program against the scumsucker. Continue to protect the assets. Move all financial contacts to Grandpa's house. By the end of the day, Jonathan was aching in places he didn't even know he had. It felt good to be working outdoors and to be around old friends. He headed home, cleaned up, and went to work on his second job. His wife. That night, Rich Patton got a phone call from a blocked number. Hello. It burns, Richie. How could you let me burn like that? It hurts so bad. A quivering female voice whispered. He recalled laying on the hard asphalt, watching his car engulfed in flames, his young wife still inside. He dropped the phone, the words resurrecting his pain. Ah, the voice screamed on the other end of the line, still audible from where he was standing. No, you can't bring the kids over here for us to watch, Brenda snapped angrily. But Mom, I need to go out, Susan said. Take your kids with you. They're your damn kids, Susan. Everything takes so much longer with 3 children to take care of, she explained. What else do you have to do? It's not like you have a job or do much around the house anyway. You going to run off to that scumsucker you're screwing? Her mother sneered. He's not a scumsucker. He's a good man. You don't understand. I understand he's a low-life prick that's screwing another man's wife. God, you're such a disappointment to your father and I. We can't even walk around town without someone reminding us of what a 304 you've become. Mother, how could you say that? Dump the scumsucker and go crawling back to that husband of yours. Beg him for forgiveness. Blow him every night for a year. Maybe it's not too late to salvage your marriage. I did nothing wrong, Susan argued. He's the one who should be apologizing to me. She was shocked to hear nothing but a busy tone on the other end of the line. Max Schroeder sat at the table, addressing the group before him. They had the card room at the senior center, the door closed. More women than men, but all understood the situation. They'd already divided responsibilities. The phone lines would be burning up well into the night. The first pass had brought the Gray Brigade up to speed. Second pass was to start applying pressure to the next generation. Make it clear what was acceptable behavior and what wasn't. Within days, the whole damn town would know. Cheating wasn't the issue. It happened. Hell, probably better than half the group had probably strayed a time or two. Maybe more than a few times. But blatant disrespect, expecting a spouse to accept an ongoing affair, all but abandoning a family while expecting to be able to keep the rest of your life, your family and friends, was too much to ask. No, they all agreed. It was unforgivable behavior on the part of both cheaters. Make up or break up, but not this. Disgusting. The me generation. They would be reminded, chided, insulted, and condemned wherever they went. No, that kind of behavior couldn't be allowed to spread. Responsibilities were divvied up, tasks assigned, options discussed and weighed. When the room had nearly emptied, the colonel sat with 5 associates. This is the ugly part. We all understand what's involved? The risk. His lifelong friends all agreed. They were up to the task. John Crum took the lead. Copies of the keys to his house were passed out. Straight from the wife's keychain to Jenkins' hardware, and then in the hands of the perpetrators. Pictures, articles, documentation, love letters, as much history as they could attain. Step 1 was to get more information. They'd receive notice when he was out. The Gray Network would keep tabs. Once they determined the window of opportunity was right, the first break-in would occur, and they'd collect as much intel as possible. Only then would campaign guilt go into full gear. A couple of them felt a little uneasy at what they were going to do. Not enough to stop them. Susan parked in his garage, closing the door behind her quickly. She took off her hat and sunglasses, embarrassed that she was disguising herself. This was ridiculous. She had every right to see Rich. She entered the house through the garage and eagerly accepted his embrace. They didn't speak of anything other than missing each other as they retired to his bedroom, undressing quickly before falling into the bed together. Half an hour and 2 sessions later, he sat up, staring down at her. "How did you mess things up? Nobody down at the firm will even talk to me." Susan was stunned by his accusation. How had she messed things up? He uses her to get off, not even caring about her satisfaction after the night she'd given him. She confronted her husband, alone, faced his anger and accusations. And now it's her fault? You wanted to stop hiding, wanted your overnight stays. It was your idea to tell him, force him to accept us, threaten him with divorce and the kids. How the hell did it become everyone's business? He snapped. I don't know. Gossip. He told his family and mine. They're still barely speaking to me. Word must have spread. You were supposed to keep it private, just between the two of you. How do you know it was me? Where I lived. Rich was livid with anger. How the hell do I know? I talked to him just like we discussed. Told him how it was. You're the man. You should have known how he'd react. I'm not some Neanderthal who can't keep his woman. I'm supposed to remove half my brain to think like him. Susan could barely believe his words. The disrespect, the anger. Where did it come from? She started pulling on her clothing before she said something she'd regret. Rich reached out for her. Where are you going? We're not through already. You just got here. It's been a week since we've been together. You shouldn't talk about Jonathan like that. He did nothing wrong. He's a good man. We're the ones who want to change the rules. Good man? Starting rumors and gossip about us? Ignoring you? Disrespecting you? Where's the good in that? Rich snapped, standing between her and the door. She buttoned her blouse and combed her hair back with her fingers. Plenty of time to clean up when she got home. She was thankful that her mother-in-law accepted her excuse that she needed to pick up some job applications. I have to go. I'm going to be late. He moved toward her, pulling her into his arms. What about us, Susie Q? I miss you. We need some time together. Tell him you'll be spending the night over here. He already knows. We need to reconnect. You're everything to me. You know how much I love you. I can't stand going days on end without you. I need you. She listened to his pleading, knowing it was true. Without her, he'd be retreating back to his old ways and nothing flat. She held his face in her hands, kissing him softly. We'll work something out. No overnights. What I tell the kids. Foist them off on your parents again. She sighed. It'll be a cold day in hell before they'll watch them again. They've made that abundantly clear. She started to pull away, but he clung to her, needy. Come over after they go to sleep. I need to feel you in my arms again as I fall asleep. Wake up next to you, your smell in my head, your warmth beside me. Don't you want that? She nodded, but if she were honest with herself, she would admit she hated being apart from her children at night. She didn't sleep well in Rich's place. She smiled to herself. She didn't sleep much at all, come to think of it. It was like being a teen again. Let me think about it, okay? I've got to get things settled at home before making any more waves. How about a quick bee job before you go? To hold me over? His callous words stung her. Was that all she was to him? I have to go, Rich. I'm going to be late as is. I can't afford to alienate my last babysitter. He was pushing her to her knees. You promised you'd never deny me, Susan. You said you loved me. I need this. It'll only take a few minutes. She refused to let the tears fall as she mechanically gave him B-job, his hands in her hair, forcing his way. Max took the call from Madge. Nearly 2 hours all told, the 304 spent with him, sneaking around like a thief in the night. He called his daughter, berating her. What the hell were you thinking, Carolyn? Watching the kids while she went to get laid. She said she was looking for a job, picking up applications. And you believe the lying 304 after all she's done? Carolyn was not happy when Susan showed up at her door 20 minutes late. She helped get the kids packed up and into the car. Before Susan could leave, Carolyn grabbed her arm. Never again, you lying 304. Using me to cover for your bum while you screw around on my son. Susan trembled at the harsh words. I didn't. Save the lies for somebody else. You reek of sex. You could at least clean up before picking up my grandkids. What the hell is wrong with you? In the battle for shame and anger, anger won out. If you don't ever want to see the kids, that's fine by me. I didn't do anything wrong. You'll never have to watch them again. You'll be lucky to see them. Susan was rocked back on her feet when Carolyn's hand whipped across her face. He's right. You're nothing but a 304. Jonathan sat with his grandfather after a long, hard day. The last thing he needed to hear about was his wife screwing around on him. I don't want to know, Grandpa. Frankly, I could care less. She had your mother watching the kids. Said she was getting some job applications or some such nonsense. Jonathan's anger took hold until his hands were shaking. Nobody watches my kids unless I say it's okay. Nobody. Not you, not Mom, not even a neighborhood sitter. Don't blame your mother on this. She was trying to do the right thing. She has a right to see her grandkids. I don't blame her. It's the lying 304 under my roof. I'll talk to Mom myself. Mom, what's a Jezebel? Cindy asked. A what? Susan asked, surprised by her eldest words. Dana's grandma said you were a Jezebel. Susan felt her blood pressure rising. She had no right. The old witch had no right talking to her daughter like that. It's nothing, baby. Something old people say, but not in front of her daughter if she could help it. No more play dates with Dana. That was for damn sure. Rich didn't notice the stares or whispered comments as he entered his old employer's office. It was good to maintain relationships, and his standing monthly lunch outing was one way to do that. He waited in the lobby, patiently. After 20 minutes, he realized something was wrong. As each new person exited the elevator, he'd see the looks, the whispers. None would hold eye contact. Something was up. He made a call. Jean? I'm in the lobby for our lunch, he said. There was a silence at the other end. I don't think I'll be able to make it today. Something come up? I haven't seen Eric or Dan either. It's just not a good idea right now. Things are kind of hectic. Maybe some other time. I'm really busy. I have to go. Rich listened to the dead air on the other end of the line. A quick call to Eric fared no better. We've had this standing lunch date for over 2 years. Eric? What's going on? He heard anger in the man's voice. Your girlfriend? You lead us to believe you guys were serious, getting engaged. You never said she was married with 3 kids. You used us to cover for you. We all feel like idiots now. My wife would kill me if I went to lunch with you. No, I don't think we'll be going to lunch anytime soon. He looked up from the phone, feeling the eyes on him. He walked toward the revolving glass door, falling in with the crowd exiting the building. Got a year. She's married. He heard the whispers from in front of him. Got cake and eat it too. 3 kids. From behind. 2 million for killing his wife. Echoed in his ears as he hurried down the sidewalk. Late summer was a hard time on the ranch. Dawn to dusk most days, checking fences, working on the irrigation, moving herds from pasture to pasture. Almost time for the second hay cutting, which was breakneck while the weather held. Uncle Len still abided by Grandpa Max's ways for the most part. Ranching had become largely mechanized, pickup trucks replacing horses for a lot of the work. The Shredder still stood by the practice of driving as infrequently as possible, as short a distance as possible. Gas cost money. For much of the work, horseback was the way to go, especially when it came to moving the herds and the pasture checks. Jonathan had forgotten how sore a man could get riding a horse 10 hours a day. How tiring it was, hauling around 40-pound packs, digging trenches, replacing fence posts. He was looking forward to the haying, which mostly involved driving around. Most ranch hands were jack of all trades by necessity. A standard motto on the ranch was, if it's broke, fix it. His experience with machines, engines, and anything mechanical was almost revered. No sending out the ranch vehicles for work. If it was broken, Jonathan could fix it. He might be rusty on the range, awkward herding strays, but his mechanical abilities and his willingness to do whatever the job took won the admiration of his fellow hands. He liked that. He went home each evening, tired, sore, and hungry, but he couldn't remember being so satisfied with his accomplishments at the end of each day. It was only when he got home and had to face the anger, disrespect, and condemnation of his supposed wife and soulmate that he'd get down. He braced himself before entering his house each evening, reminding himself of his plans and purpose. It wouldn't last forever, he told himself. The first picture of a charred body was slipped under Rich's door sometime after he'd gone to bed. It was grisly, almost unrecognizable as human. Someone had written in white marker, Heather Patton, burned to death, now burning in hell. His hands trembled as he picked it up. How could anybody do something so horrible? So heinous? Didn't they know how much he regretted it? How badly it hurt? It was an accident. It wasn't his fault. He'd loved her. He sat on the floor sobbing until he fell asleep. Susan was unloading the car of groceries. What should have been a simple 20-minute trip took over an hour. The kids had run inside carrying a bag each. It had been a painful outing, seeing the glares, the looks of condemnation. Nobody would speak to her, but whispers followed her everywhere. Barely contained laughter in some cases. Did the whole world know of her relationship? "Hey, Susan," her nosy neighbor called out, almost running over. Shit. The last thing she needed. "Hello, Margie. So what's he like? This young lover? Does he have a huge tool? Can he go all night? What's the scoop?" Susan felt her face blushing. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Come on, Susie. You can tell me. Everyone knows. You and that young lawyer kid, the one who killed his wife. Isn't that scary? Exciting, maybe. You don't think he'd do that to you when he's done with you, do you?" Susan couldn't believe the bile that was pouring forth from the neighborhood gossip's lips. It was an accident. He didn't kill her. It sure paid off pretty good for an accident. So what is it? Susan slammed the back of the car shut, turned and entered her house without saying another word. Jonathan held her in his arms while she cried in their bed. He felt pretty good about how things were going. "What's wrong, baby?" "They're horrible. Everyone is horrible to me. They think I'm a 304. "You are a 304. "Shuh," he whispered. "Things will get better. You do what's right and ignore them. Why can't they understand? Haven't they ever been in love before?" "I can't help how I feel." She sobbed. "Do you? Do you love me, Jonathan?" "I've always loved you, baby." His lips moved across her neck, nipping gently. "Love me, Jonathan? Please," she begged. "God, I wish I could. I want you so bad," he lied, his breath tickling her ear. "You can. I haven't been with him. Not since that last night. I'm yours, honey." Still lying. Madge had reported seeing her at his place only a week ago. 3 hours there. At least she was lying about it, not throwing it in his face. Progress of a sorts. "I'm afraid," he said softly. "I know you're not the only woman he's been with. I don't know if he's given you anything, any disease." She tensed up. "How could you think that? You don't use a condom with him, do you?" Jonathan asked. I don't want to talk about it," she whined. "I can't be with you until I know you're clean. But we've been doing it for a year, with no problems. Thanks for reminding me." 304. "I was checked. I'm clean. It's not fair to risk the lives of both our children's parents. He's screwing other women. Who knows what diseases they may have. He wouldn't do that. He loves me. You love me, and you did it," Jonathan reminded her. Her hips were driving up against his hand, and he could feel her getting close. He backed off, rubbing her gently. She groaned her need. "I'm your wife, Jonathan. Make love to me. Screw me, honey." He pulled her close, hugging her. "How I wish I could, baby. Not until I know you're clean and done seeing him." The magazines started showing up. Miss Cosmo, Good Housekeeping, Southern Living, Homes and Gardens, all addressed to Heather Patton. A constant reminder. A large picture had been taped to his front door. Her gravestone, defaced. Under the words "loving wife," someone had written, "murdered," and replaced with a cheating 304. He torn the picture into little shreds and spent hours scrubbing the gravestone clean of the chalk message, long after every speck of writing was gone. The police found him after being called and questioned him about his actions, threatening him for vandalism. He went berserk, screaming and crying, and had to be handcuffed before he calmed enough to explain. They checked his ID and compared it to the gravestone. One of the officers looked at him in distaste. "Oh, you, the wife stealer. Yeah, we know you." 3 days later, he was scrubbing her gravestone again. "Yes, I got your previous messages. No, I can't make a payment. I've lost my job and I don't have the money." Max Schritta hung up, grinning. Third call in 2 weeks. Things were definitely going according to plan. He looked at the picture in his hand, smiling. He'd give it to the boy after work. It should help. It didn't prove anything, but should help sow the seeds of discontent. He examined the papers scattered across his kitchen table. Sightings, comments made, background. Information retrieved from the scumsucker's house. A wealth of information. For Max, it was exciting, fun to have something to do. A new purpose, if only temporary. Righting a wrong. Punishing the guilty. Those two were very, very guilty. Ranches don't shut down on weekends. Jonathan worked, but brought his family with him. He lifted his eldest onto the saddle of the old quarter horse. "Do you really think that's safe?" Susan asked. "Been doing it for 4 generations. Buttercup's a gentle horse. She'll take care of our girl." Cindy was glowing with pride, her hand petting the horse's mane, leaning over and talking to her.